What the f? Get the f in!
Put your hands up! Don't you
On the 28th of July, 2021, in Essex, Maryland, what began as a simple traffic stop for fake tags and missing paperwork turned into something no officer on duty could have imagined. Inside the trunk of a car sat the bodies of 2 children, hidden for months, their lives cut short.
Y'all keep asking me to move on. Y'all keep telling me one more day. Y'all keep saying everything will get better. Y'all keep saying this, it can't get no worse.
This is the story of Nicole Michelle Johnson, a woman pulled over for a routine violation, whose secret would unravel into one of the most disturbing cases in Baltimore County's history. It was just past 11 p.m. on July 28, 2021, in Essex, Baltimore County, Maryland. Police officers conducted what began as a routine traffic stop. A car had been spotted driving with fake temporary tags, no valid registration, and no insurance on record. In neighborhoods like Essex, such violations are relatively common. Officers expect forged plates or suspended drivers, not anything beyond a ticket or arrest. That night, however, a stop intended to be routine would unravel into one of the most disturbing child abuse cases in Maryland's recent history. Behind the wheel was 33-year-old Nicole Michelle Johnson. At first, she appeared calm, almost indifferent, as officers asked for identification and questioned her about the invalid paperwork. Her responses were slow, her tone oddly detached.
Like, we literally, well, not her, but me and my kids literally living in the car. Like,
to the officers on scene, her demeanor stood out. Most drivers in her position would be nervous, apologetic, or even confrontational. Johnson was none of these. Instead, she seemed evasive, as if her mind were elsewhere, giving half answers while avoiding eye contact. As the officers pressed further, the details of the car itself raised red flags. The registration was fraudulent. The supposed insurance was non-existent. Johnson had no valid driver's license in her possession. She gave inconsistent explanations about the car, who it belonged to, and where she was headed. The officers began preparing for what looked like a simple impound and arrest for traffic violations. But as they continued, something else unsettled them, something they couldn't initially place. One officer noted an unmistakable odor beginning to seep from the vehicle. At first it was faint, blending with the humid summer air. But as the exchange dragged on, the smell grew stronger, sharper, impossible to ignore.
Eric, do me a favor. Walk over to that car and just see what you smell. Not drugs or anything, but see if you smell anything other than drugs.
Officers with experience knew that scent. It was the odor of decomposition, a smell that cannot be mistaken once encountered. Still, no one could imagine what they were about to uncover. To them, Nicole Johnson was just another driver caught with fake tags. The possibility that the vehicle contained a crime scene of unimaginable proportions seemed far-fetched. Yet the odor gnawed at their instincts. Protocol required them to search further. Johnson's strange composure only deepened suspicion.
a bunch of dirty.
That don't smell like dirty clothes.
Huh?
That don't smell like dirty clothes.
Even when informed that the car would have to be towed, she displayed no visible frustration or urgency. Instead, she muttered incoherently about family matters and seemed resigned to whatever was about to happen. Her flat affect contrasted sharply with the seriousness of the situation. When officers moved toward the trunk, Johnson reluctantly complied. What followed would transform a routine late-night stop into headline news. Inside the trunk lay the secret Johnson had carried for over a year, one that would shock not only the officers on scene, but the entire state once revealed. This was no ordinary traffic stop. It was the moment a hidden nightmare finally surfaced. When instructed to open the trunk, Johnson complied with an eerie calmness. She didn't argue, didn't resist. Instead, she stepped out of the driver's seat, walked to the back of the car, and lifted the lid. What happened next would leave hardened officers shaken. From the trunk, Johnson reached in and pulled out a large black trash bag. She set it down without expression, as if it were nothing out of the ordinary. Then she dragged out a tote bag, bulky and stained, its shape betraying that something unnatural was packed inside. Officers, already bracing themselves, were hit with a wave of the smell they had been dreading. When they looked inside, the reality came crashing in.
Open that up. Open that up. What the Get the in!
Put your hands up! Don't you!
Two small, decomposing bodies. One was 7-year-old Joshlyn Marie James, Johnson's niece. The other, 5-year-old Larry O'Neill Jr., her nephew. Both children had been reported missing only in the most informal sense. Family members had grown concerned, but no formal missing persons case had ever been filed. For over a year, their young lives had ended, and their remains were carried in the trunk of a car driven daily through Baltimore County. The condition of the remains was devastating. Joshlyn had been left in the trunk for more than a year, her body wrapped in blankets and plastic. Larry's death was more recent, just weeks before the stop. His small frame was stuffed into the tote bag, his body concealed under layers meant to mask the inevitable. The decomposition made the scene overwhelming. The odor, the sight, the sheer unnaturalness of it. Officers on scene recoiled, some stepping back, others covering their mouths. It is one thing to respond to a homicide. It is another to find children hidden like refuse in a vehicle. Shock mixed with disbelief. What had started as a casual enforcement stop had escalated into the discovery of a double child homicide. Witnesses recalled the stunned silence, followed by immediate action. Johnson was quickly detained on the spot, her hands cuffed as backup units poured in. She offered little resistance, almost as though she knew this moment was inevitable. Crime scene tape went up as detectives and forensics teams swarmed the area. The images seared into the memory of the first responders. 2 children robbed of their futures, discarded in bags, their aunt driving around with their bodies as if nothing were wrong. It was grotesque in its simplicity. What lingered most that night was not just the horror of the discovery, but the way it had been unearthed, by chance, during a routine traffic stop. Had it not been for expired tags and fake plates, Joshlyn and Larry might have remained hidden even longer.
Hey, bro. It's a baby. Come on. Please.
Their stories buried with them. The trunk was no longer just part of a car. It was a crime scene that revealed the collapse of a family and the unimaginable choices of a caretaker turned killer. The names Joshlyn Marie James and Larry O'Neill Jr. should have belonged to school roll calls, birthday invitations, and family albums. Instead, their names would be spoken in autopsy reports and court documents, forever tied to a tragedy that robbed them of futures they never had the chance to live. Joshlyn was 7 years old at the time of her death. She was remembered by relatives as curious and bright-eyed, a child who deserved stability but instead was left in the care of an aunt, unprepared and ultimately unwilling to provide it. Larry was only 5 years old, small and trusting, a boy who should have been preparing for kindergarten milestones. Both were placed in Nicole Johnson's custody, a responsibility born more out of circumstance than genuine care. Johnson, who struggled with housing, employment, and mental health issues, became their guardian. In the months that followed, the children's lives deteriorated quietly, unseen by the systems designed to protect them. The autopsy findings were as disturbing as the discovery itself. Both children were severely malnourished, with Joshlyn weighing only 18 pounds and Larry 21 pounds at the time their bodies were examined. For perspective, healthy children of their ages should have weighed nearly double. The weight alone told the story of prolonged neglect, meals skipped, bodies weakening, resilience eroded by hunger. Investigators pieced together a harrowing timeline. Joshlyn had died first in May 2020. Johnson admitted to striking the girl during a moment of anger, a blow that caused her to collapse and stop breathing. Instead of seeking help, Johnson stuffed her body into a suitcase and left it inside the trunk of her car. There, in the stifling heat of Maryland summers and the freezing cold of winter, Joshlyn's remains deteriorated, her existence reduced to silence, her absence never formally reported. Larry lived longer, but his fate was no less tragic. Roughly 2 months before the July 2021 traffic stop, he too died under Johnson's care. The exact cause of death could not be determined due to the condition of his remains, though malnutrition and neglect were undeniable factors. Johnson admitted only to concealing his body in a tote bag, placed alongside his sister in the car's trunk. For weeks, she drove around Baltimore County with the decomposing bodies of 2 children entrusted to her protection. The tragedy lay not just in their deaths, but in what their lives could have been. Joshlyn should have been in the 3rd grade, learning multiplication tables and making friends at recess. Larry should have been clutching crayons, practicing writing his name, still in the innocent stage where every day brings discovery. Instead, their short lives were defined by hunger, neglect, and violence. The contrast is jarring. 2 children who should have been safe in classrooms, laughing with friends, eating meals with family, instead endured silent suffering hidden behind the closed doors of an apartment and the trunk of a car. No teachers, no neighbors, no official system intervened. Their cries were unheard, their absence unnoticed outside of the family. By the time police discovered them, their stories had already been cut short. What remained was evidence of suffering, bodies that weighed less than toddlers, and a timeline of neglect stretching back over a year. Joshlyn and Larry's lives were more than case files. They were children who should have had futures. The silence surrounding their deaths became the loudest indictment of all, of Nicole Johnson, of absent accountability, and of a system that failed to see them until it was far too late. After the horrific discovery in the trunk of Nicole Michelle Johnson's car, investigators began the painstaking process of piecing together how 2 young children could vanish without notice for so long. Detectives combed through her background, her statements, and her relationships, searching for an explanation. What they found was a web of neglect, deception, and chilling indifference. At first, Johnson deflected responsibility. During initial questioning, she claimed ignorance of how the bodies ended up in her vehicle, offering vague answers and contradictions that raised immediate suspicion. But as officers pressed her, her story began to shift. She moved from denial to partial admissions, finally acknowledging that she had concealed the children's bodies for over a year. Each revelation painted a darker picture of a caregiver who had not only failed in her duty, but had actively covered up the consequences. Charging documents revealed the disturbing details. Investigators established that Joshlyn, the 7-year-old niece, had died in May 2020 after Johnson struck her in anger. Instead of calling for medical help or reporting the death, Johnson placed the child's body in a suitcase and left it in her car. For months, the suitcase remained in the trunk, driven through neighborhoods, parking lots, and highways, as if the child's existence had been erased, except for the haunting reminder in the back of the vehicle. Larry, the 5-year-old nephew, died later, sometime in the spring of 2021. Johnson admitted that she did not know or would not disclose the precise cause of his death, but toxicology and autopsy findings confirmed the children were severely malnourished. Johnson eventually confessed to placing Larry's body in a plastic tote bag and adding it to the trunk beside his sister. The grin cargo remained undiscovered until the night of the traffic stop. The investigation also unearthed the family dynamics that placed the children in Johnson's care. Their mother, Johnson's sister, had been unable to care for them due to personal struggles, and custody had informally shifted to Nicole. It was an arrangement without proper oversight, one that allowed the children to vanish from schools, neighbors, and even extended family without alarm. In court documents, prosecutors noted that no official welfare checks or school reports had flagged their prolonged absence. It was as though Joshlyn and Larry had disappeared from public record long before their deaths. Detectives were especially disturbed by Johnson's own words during the arrest. When confronted with the scale of her deception, she reportedly told officers, "It would be 20 years before they found me."
After all of this, because they were not tiny. Like you see them in the pictures.
The statement underscored not just her awareness of the concealment, but her confidence that she could evade accountability indefinitely. It was not the reaction of a panicked guardian, but of someone who had calculated how long she could hide 2 young lives erased by her negligence. As the case progressed, Johnson faced a series of escalating charges: including child abuse resulting in death, neglect of a minor, failure to report a death, and unauthorized disposal of a body. Each charge added to a portrait of a woman who had not only failed to protect the children, but who had worked to erase their existence after their deaths. The deeper investigators dug, the more questions arose, not just about Johnson, but about the systems that allowed 2 children to disappear for over a year without intervention. Why did no school or social service agency raise alarms about their absence? Why was there no record of welfare checks, medical visits, or oversight? The answers revealed gaps in social accountability, where children on the margins could slip through unnoticed until tragedy brought them back into focus. Nicole Johnson's confession did not just reveal the details of 2 tragic deaths, it exposed a haunting truth, that these children lived and died in silence, with their suffering hidden in plain sight. Her words, chilling in their casualness, became a grim epitaph for Joshlyn and Larry, 2 young lives lost not just to abuse, but to indifference. By the time Nicole Michelle Johnson stood in a Baltimore County courtroom in February 2025, nearly 4 years had passed since the deaths of 7-year-old Joshlyn and 5-year-old Larry. Their story, once hidden in the trunk of a beat-up car, was now fully laid bare in front of a judge, prosecutors, and the surviving family who had been left to mourn. Johnson faced the court with a decision that many had anticipated. She pleaded guilty to 2 counts of first-degree child abuse resulting in death. It was the most serious charge short of murder, and it carried a penalty fitting the scale of her crimes. In exchange for avoiding a full jury trial and sparing the family the agony of reliving each detail, Johnson accepted the deal that sealed her fate. The sentence was heavy, though to some, it could never be enough. The judge handed down life imprisonment, with all but 50 years suspended. The legal phrasing meant that Johnson would serve a minimum of 5 decades behind bars before she could ever see the possibility of release. At her age, it was as close to a life sentence as the system could deliver. For the state, it was accountability. For the children's family, it was only a measure of justice. Too little, too late. Inside the courtroom, reactions were mixed but raw. Prosecutors described the case as one of the most disturbing they had ever encountered, not only because of the brutality, but because of the extended cover-up. Family members wept as the sentence was read, some expressing anger that Johnson would ever again breathe free air, while others found a sliver of solace knowing she would never harm another child. The judge's remarks were pointed, underscoring the sheer cruelty of the acts and the indifference Johnson had shown even after the children's deaths. "These children depended on you for life and care," the judge said. "Instead, you became the instrument of their suffering and the keeper of their silence." Beyond the courtroom, the case left the public grappling with harder questions. How could 2 children vanish for more than a year without anyone sounding the alarm? Why were there no school records, no medical visits, no social service interventions to check on their well-being? Reporters and community advocates echoed the outrage. Joshlyn and Larry did not just fall through the cracks, they were swallowed by them. The tragedy drew attention to a wider problem. Across the United States, cases of child neglect often escape detection until it is too late. Social service agencies, stretched thin and underfunded, rely heavily on schools, neighbors, and extended family to report concerns. But when children are quietly pulled from classrooms, when relatives stay silent, and when the safety nets are loose, abuse and neglect can continue in the shadows. Joshlyn and Larry's story became a haunting example of what happens when the silence is allowed to fester. In Baltimore County and beyond, the case sparked renewed conversations about mandatory welfare checks, closer monitoring of informal custody arrangements, and stronger school follow-up for children who disappear from enrollment. Community organizations called for heightened awareness, urging neighbors to take notice when children are absent or appear neglected.